Hello and welcome to The Cutting Room, a movie show by All the Right Movies. We're here from downtown. My name is Luke, and with me are Matt.
Hello.
And Westy.
Hello.
Are we all here? Well, I'm going anyway. On this episode, we're hitting the bricks, pal. We're in NYC to talk about David Mamet's macho tale of shady salesman. It's Glengarry, Glen Ross. Now, this episode of The Cutting Room is being created for our Patreon supporters, so a big hello to you guys and gals watching. Thank you for your support.
Yes. Hello.
All closes.
Yeah, all close. Well, maybe a couple of us.
They're all on the board.
To decide on the film that we're talking about on the show, we went to our Patreon faithful and asked them for their suggestions, movies that they wanted us to talk about. We had a whole heap of film to choose from, a lot of great suggestions, you know, Fight Club, King of Comedy, Some Like It Hot, Cobra, all the classics.
Yeah.
Well,
Cobra.
unbelievable.
Cobra. We'll be talking about that one day, I guarantee it.
Yeah, you will be by yourself, probably. Concert like you always do.
We've noted all of your suggestions, guys, so we'll be going back to the list next month. But for this episode, we put 4 films on our poll for our patrons to vote for their favourite. And we decided on the 4 films by, firstly, choosing the film that was suggested the most, and that was Glengarry, Glen Ross. Then each of us picked out an individual favourite from the suggestions that you gave us. So I picked Blowout, Matt went with Get Carter, Westy, unbelievably, went with Time Cop.
Yep.
One suggestion. Yeah.
Friend of the family.
The poll was pretty much over before it started. Glengarry, Glen Ross raced into a early lead, ending with 43% of the votes. Get Carter got 26%, Blowout 22%, leaving Time Cop 9% of the votes.
Beautiful. Just
Disappointing.
Well, yeah, it's fine.
I haven't seen that one actually, Westy. Is it worth it?
You might not be ready for it yet, but your kids are going to
love it. Okay, great. Well, on that note, I'm going to come to you first, Westy. Why do you want to talk about Glengarry, Glen Ross?
I don't know if I do.
I was expecting that.
It came up and I was like, oh, great. Okay. I'll watch that again. And I've seen it years ago, and it didn't really resonate. And I don't know why it's got such a high acclaim. And I wanted to go back and really just sit with it and understand what was going on. And the more I kind of tried to analyze it, the more I tried to kind of break it down as to why it's really good, is really not down to the filmmaking aspect of it. I think it's just down to these great performances.
Great performances.
And it is a performance piece, and I enjoy it. But I will go on and say what I think of the film as we go. I don't really have. I mean, I just wanted to have some fun. I wanted to talk about Time Cop. I was, right in the mood for that. But no, I mean, I didn't know if I really wanted to talk about it. But I mean, I enjoyed coming back to it. I do have some issues that I would like you guys to clarify as we go through.
Sure.
Like I've said, I don't know why it's so highly regarded. So I would like to understand your views on that and where you're coming from on that front. But it's just, I don't know. It's just not one for me, I don't think. But we'll get there. Let's see.
Wow. Okay. One of those rare occasions where we don't all agree. Which, I like, keep it spiky. Very nice.
Yeah.
Spiky and spicy.
But I came to this film having read a 5-star review in Empire. Prior to that, I just hadn't heard of the film at all. I think it just dropped like a stone over here, and it didn't do that well in America either. It must have been mid-90s. I loved it, but I didn't really fully appreciate it because I was like 15, 16. I mean, I was loving the swearing.
You filed it, and I'm over the fucking top. You owe me a Cadillac.
But the majority of it passed me by.
Yeah.
And coming back to it over the years, I think it's a pretty incredible piece of filmmaking, really. I think the script is razor sharp. Obviously, it's a David Mamet script. Performances, I think our career highlights, even for the likes of Lemon and Pacino. But what passed me by the most until recently is James Foley's direction, which I really thought was pretty amazing stuff on the revisit. And that Baldwin scene, one of the very best, so I'm sure we're going to enjoy ourselves here.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Matt, with whose camp are you in, Westies or mine? Doesn't mean there's a division or anything like that.
Yeah, yours is.
Wow.
That's a stupid question, isn't
it? Nothing like putting pressure on us straight away.
That's not a pressure.
Is it going to be me?
We're all used to it now.
Matt,
wait and see.
If you think that's pressure, you are not for the sales biz. I'll tell you that for nothing.
You call yourself a salesman, you son of a bitch?
I am not a closer. No, Glengarry, Glen Ross. I think it's a nice change of pace for us, to be honest, and it's probably a good one to start this new format with, because we did put it in the classic poll a few times when we were doing the podcast, and it did fairly well. I think it did well enough to think, oh, if we keep putting it in, it'll win. But then going back to it again, I think, is it really a classic? Does it deserve the same treatment as Back to the Future, Jaws, something like that?
Probably not.
Probably not, but it's definitely worth looking at. The cast is incredible.
Yes.
There's at least one scene in this film that is a solid gold classic.
Oh, yeah.
And a film about a bunch of over-the-hill men who aren't especially brilliant at the jobs. Selling property shouldn't be as involving as this one is, which is why I do like it a lot. It's a film I came to quite late. I think I was in my 30s, I think, by the time I got around to it. For no particular reason, I just didn't get to it that quickly. But first view, and I was like, right, I do get it. I see why people really love this. So I have been hoping this would come up sooner rather than later.
Very nice. Okay. Oh, muted, mixed. Not too sure where it's going to go. Should be interesting.
Should be.
Okay, then. Let's go out on the rainy night and close the deal on Glengarry Glen Ross. Glengarry Glen Ross tells the tale of 4 real estate salesmen who, after a roasting from Blake downtown, must do everything in their powers to close sales leads and put themselves top of the sales board, giving them a shot at the Cadillac Eldorado and the fabled Glengarry leads. Written by David Mamet, directed by James Foley, and produced by Jerry Tarkovsky and Stanley Zupnik for Zupnik Enterprises. Distributed by New Line Cinema, Glengarry Glen Ross stars Jack Lemmon as Sheldon Levine, Al Pacino plays Ricky Roma, Ed Harris as Dave Moss, and Alan Arkin as George Aronow. On the cutting room, we talk about key elements of the filmmaking process. That changes on each episode depending on the film that we're talking about. Here we're talking about the director, the writer, the cast. We'll pick out our personal highlights from the film before we round things off by individually rating the film out of 10. First up, we're starting with the director, James Foley. Glengarry Glen Ross was directed by James Foley, a director we haven't talked about in the last 3 years. Previously, he directed the Sean Penn, Christopher Walken crime drama At Close Range in 86 and the Madonna vehicle Who's That Girl in 87. Disappointingly, his last 2 films were the 50 Shades sequels, both of which he was Razzie nominated for as Worst Director. Shame, shame.
And you're surprised we haven't spoken about him in the last 3 years. What am I going to say?
I mean,
This is the only film to talk about.
At Close
the
Range
Madonna
is quite
film
good.
in the 250
At
Shades.
Close Range is all right. It's not great.
Oh, I can see where this is going. Okay.
Yeah.
GGR is almost certainly his best work. So, Matt, what do you think of his direction here?
I think Foley's got a very big challenge on his hands with this film because it is so clearly designed to be a play in its script format. And he has to overcome that. And I think he does a pretty good job of overcoming the obstacles that are in his way here because I think he does a few things. And I think, firstly, deciding to have the first half of the film set against this torrential downpour rain is a really smart move because, for one thing, that's something you're clearly not going to get in the play. And I think it just adds real atmosphere to this opening, just even when you're just hearing that storm raging outside. It really ramps up the tension and the conflict going on between all the characters. But it also works in a visual sense as well, because the fact that it's chucking it down, the characters have to run. They have to run from the bar to the office.
Yeah.
Shelley has to run from his car to that guy's house to make the sale. So it actually helps keep the pace of the film up. These characters can't stroll around. The rain is like hassling them and harrying them around the place. And I think that actually is quite clever and it works really well.
It's good
And-
that when Shelley's soaking wet at the door as well. It's like you don't really want to let him in, even if he was the most inviting person. It's just it's almost like you don't want him to come in because he's going to make a mess.
Yeah, of course. He's going to
So,
soil the
so-
place.
Yeah, exactly. So it really works. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think it's shot brilliantly as well. Like one scene in particular I really love is that scene you get of Levine and Williamson when they're in Williamson's car and Levine is trying to bribe him to get the lead and the rain is pelting off the window and it casts all those shadows across the face. I think that's great stuff. So I think Foley does good work making use of that. I think that's quite clever. I like how he has the characters constantly moving. They're always moving around the office, in and out the phone booth, in and around the bar.
Yeah.
It just keeps the pace up quite well because this could be a very static film. So I think he avoids that. And the one last thing that he does, there's a really nice nod that he makes to Nighthawks, which is a very famous painting by Edward Hopper.
Yeah.
And then there's a really nice nod where it's Moss and Aronow go to the bar, and there's a shot of the exterior of the bar, which really does look like Nighthawks, so I like that. So I think, considering the limitations he's got, I think Foley does a good job of making this seem like a film and feel cinematic for the most part.
Yeah.
I do think there is still theatrical elements in there that he can't quite overcome, but for me, that's more to do with the writing, which we'll get to.
Okay. Oh, lovely. Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, very difficult for a film like this, which is dialogue heavy, to keep you engaged. Obviously, Mamet's dialogue crackles, but Foley keeps things flying over by making, I think, visually interesting. There's a lot of dynamic camera moves swooping in from left to right. I feel that this is a really good complement to the dialogue. They feel like they're in harmony together, like they're in the same key. And also, where he makes it visually exciting is the color scheme in the first half of the film. The neon reds of the Chinese restaurant are outrageous. You see it in the first scene, so vibrant and distinct. It's like Suspiria. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And a hint towards this feeling of danger or impending doom. The blue hangs kind of like a sad blanket over Shelley when he's on the phone about his daughter in the hospital. Maybe you could say it's a little heavy-handed, but I really thought that it popped from a visual point of view. And I think what adds to that is the space in which the film operates. It's all indoors, usually in tight close-up. There are some outdoor scenes, but they're usually telephone boxes or cars with the rain beating down and that deep red hue penetrating the frame. It all makes things like claustrophobic and uncomfortable. Really like that. And then by the second half of the film, the colour scheme's ripped away, leaving in its wake the muted tones of reality. The job's crap, reserved for deadbeats like Roma, Moss, and Shelley, scrabbling around in the dirt trying to con honest people out of their hard-earned. So I really like that reflection of what's going on and the contrast between the first and the second half. I thought it really left a stamp on the film. Some great choices for me. What about you, Westy? Great choices?
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, actually the exact opposite of what you guys think. Which is obviously what I'm going to say. I feel the film, like, you could put the camera anywhere, and I think he does. I don't think he knows where he wants to put it to tell the story. I think it's the performances that shine. He goes from a big wide with the camera tracking back, punching into a huge close-up. The reds and the blues, like you said there, you said that. I mean, you sold it beautifully, but I still don't buy it. I just feel like it's really heavily done, and it's really over the top. And they're just like, oh, this is kind of like Chinatown, Blade Runner. These are all the influences. I can see where this film has influenced other filmmakers. With, the rain at the start, like Matt was talking about, is very Seven. You've got a very Fincher vibe with this. You've got the neon lights. You've got all that kind of look that translated further on in this type of genre. I mean, Wolf of Wall Street wouldn't be Wolf of Wall Street without this film. I think it's just Wolf of Wall Street on a tripod. Right. Basically, that Baldwin bit. That's all it is. But it's just, it doesn't feel like a finished film. And I don't know why it doesn't resonate with me. It's like a finished piece where it's all quite rounded and comes together. I don't think it's in harmony with itself. I think it just feels like the performances are amazing, but a lot of them are just very, very over the top. And a lot of the direction is very missed for me. I don't think he directs the actors half as much as he should. I don't think he directs the camera half as much as he should. When the camera moves, it's not really for any real reason. And you do feel like you're watching a stage play. Because of the way it's set up, because of the way it's shot. It's very, very safe. And if it didn't have this cast, if it didn't have Pacino, it didn't have Arkin, it didn't have, Ed Harris, it didn't have Baldwin, would this be a good film? I don't really think it would at all.
Oh, rinsed. Slammed.
It's just my opinion. It's, it's subjective.
It is subjective.
It's just the way I felt when I watched it again. I just thought, wow, this is, put it there, stick it on a tripod.
Put it there, fine. Pal. Wow.
That works.
Okay. Hey, well, Westy, your opinion, you're entitled to it.
Yeah, thank you.
So, despite David Mamet getting the lion's share of the credit for the film, James Foley puts in some good work, making the visuals look good. If you ask two of us, Westy, a different matter.
Yeah, he did a great job turning the camera on.
And that's the end of part 1. Don't forget to come back for part 2, where we've got loads more on Glengarry, Glen Ross.